What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we covered all of the weapon balancing changes for Modern Warfare 2 with the Season 1 Reloaded updates, and I did that in great detail going far beyond just reading patch notes, so if you guys have missed that, I will leave a link down below. But today we're going to focus more on the quality of life improvements and additions, as well as just my overall thoughts and opinions on the Season 1 Reloaded updates so far. Keep in mind, this is solely focused on Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer. I don't play Warzone, I have no interest in that, so that won't even be mentioned in today's video. And let's dive right into this. The first big thing that came with this update that I'm happy to finally see in the game is we have the ability to save custom blueprints for our weapons. And I was surprised to see that they didn't really advertise this or mention it in the patch notes. This is a pretty big feature that they finally brought. But for those that don't know, while you're creating your class setup, once you've got everything locked down, you can save a custom blueprint. You can name it whatever you want. And it turns out you can save up to 5 per weapon in the game, which I think is very reasonable. So when it comes to that, I'm obviously quite happy to see this, even though, of course, I feel like this probably should have just been in the game at launch. At least it's here now, and it is good to have it. After that, another feature I'm quite happy to see with the Season 1 Reloaded update, although I'm sure for many people they don't really care too much about this. This is the group feature. The reason I like this so much is it just makes it quite a bit easier for me to play with viewers, which I do almost all the time when I'm live streaming on Twitch. I'll open it up and anybody's welcome to join, or anybody that isn't a cheater or trying to troll or anything like that. Anybody's welcome to join, come play with me. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are, anybody's welcome. So if you ever do want the chance to come play with me, this is my group that I'm going to be using, and anybody from that group will be able to just find my name and join based on that. As for the next nice quality of life feature for the actual gameplay itself, they've made some adjustments to the dots that appear above teammates' heads. One of the big complaints with these dots that's been around since Modern Warfare 2019 is oftentimes you'll run into a situation where you have a teammate like across the map and you can see their dot through a bunch of walls, and it just happens to line up perfectly above an enemy player's head, making you obviously think that that's your teammate that's standing in front of you when it is in fact an enemy. And with this, they actually made an excellent adjustment here. If your teammate gets too close to an enemy, or at least within that line of the enemy, whether they're behind the enemy, in front of the enemy, all the way on the other side of the map, it doesn't really matter. If they get too close to being in line with that enemy player, their dot will simply fade away. And this should effectively eliminate this issue completely. There should never be a situation from now on, at least in core game modes, where this teammate's dot will appear above an enemy player's head. And I feel like this change was definitely a long time coming. Now, I will say with this, I've already noticed a few situations that are also confusing now, where you might see like 3 character models lined up really close together, and you immediately think those are 3 enemies, because you no longer see those teammates' dots above their head. So it can be a little scary in certain situations, or maybe exciting, because you think you're about to get like a triple kill or something, only to realize that one or more of those players were actually your teammates. You just can't see the dot anymore. Now, of course, I'll take this minor issue over the issue that they just fixed with this new system any day of the week. I'd much rather accidentally think a teammate is an enemy than an enemy is a teammate. And it is just a tricky area for them to navigate. Overall, I am happy with the change they made here. As for the next quality of life improvement that we got with this update, we now have a proper double XP timer, and you can see in the menu which double XP is active, whether that's weapon XP or player XP or battle pass XP. And again, this is one of those features that definitely should have been there immediately at launch, but at least it's here now, and I did want to spread the news. Additionally, you can also activate double XP tokens in-game now, which I would recommend doing so you're not wasting that time in lobbies. Instead of activating it before you search for a game, you're better off waiting till you're actually in the match and maybe that pre-match countdown, and then activate your double XP tokens there if you're trying to squeeze out as much time as possible. Additionally, a fairly minor improvement that we got with this update, but a nice improvement nonetheless, is when we complete a challenge, let's just say like a camo challenge for instance now, it will actually tell you exactly which challenge you just completed, which I mean is a staple feature that we've had for many, many years in Call of Duty, and for whatever reason it wasn't working properly at launch. But now it is working, so when you complete that camo challenge, it tells you which challenge you completed. And that's going to be great if you're tracking multiple challenges at the same time and you're working on multiple things. That way you know when you can move on and start focusing on the next thing. Next up for quality of life changes, and this one really helps me out a lot since I spend a ton of time testing things in custom games. They have finally made it so where if you end a custom match, instead of kicking you all the way back to the main menu, and then if you want to go back into a custom match with the same rule set, you have to set all of your settings up again. Now it just takes you back to the custom game menu with all of the previous settings saved there, so you can reboot that or swap maps or do whatever you need to do without having to redo all of your custom game settings. And I am really happy to see this. This is going to make my life a whole lot easier now. Although I would love them to take this a step further and allow us to save those custom rule sets, but at least this was a step in the right direction here. And with that pretty much covers it for the important quality of life features that I wanted to point out that we got with this update. However, there is one important bug fix that I wanted to bring up here as well that's nice to see. Before this update, if you joined a match late and then lost that game, it was supposed to prevent that loss from being added to your combat record because it's not really fair to you. You joined that game late. That's not on you for losing that match. And pre-patch, even though it said that it had that loss stat prevented, it wasn't actually working properly, whereas it is now, so they did get that fixed, and that's good. Additionally, when it comes to fixes, many people were running into issues where there were certain attachments or camos that were bugged out and they would stay locked even though you completed the requirements for them. Those have apparently all been resolved, so you should be able to progress through and unlock those things now if you are having problems with this pre-patch. Now, of course, there were a bunch of other minor bug fixes and things, but these are more for edge case weird scenarios and not actual things that are going to be applying all the time for everyone. So I wanted to focus on the main ones here today. But now I want to talk about some of the bad with this update that I've been seeing. Again, not focusing on the little minor issues, but more so the big picture stuff here. And again, just focusing on the multiplayer side, it seems like things didn't go very well at all on the Warzone side, but I don't really keep up with that too much. The first thing that got messed up here that a lot of people were noticing is the camo progress. At least the display for it got bugged out for a lot of people, particularly with the platinum camo challenges. Basically, if you have a bunch of platinum camos completed, it's displaying as 0 completed now. This does appear to just be a display bug. I wouldn't panic too heavily here. I don't think you're losing your camo progress or anything, but it is still annoying nonetheless that it's making it harder at least for you to track that. I'm sure this one will get resolved if it hasn't been already. Additionally, something that is quite frustrating is the mute options in-game have been limited. They introduced a new mute menu, and this is supposed to be a feature, not a bug. But unfortunately, this actually eliminates some of the power that you have over muting individual players. Previously, in the middle of a game, if somebody's really annoying on the mic or something, you just want to mute one person, you could find them on the scoreboard and mute them. Now, you have to pull up a mute menu if you want to mute people, and your only options now are to unmute all, which will only apply to that current match, or you can have it set up so the entire lobby is unmuted, only your party is unmuted and everybody else will be muted, only your friends are unmuted, everybody else will be muted, or only your friends and channels will be unmuted and everybody else will be muted. So you can no longer just find that one annoying guy and mute him and leave everybody else unmuted. So while this was supposed to be a step forward, this was actually 2 steps back. On top of this, something they mentioned in the patch notes is they still have occlusion on audio disabled for footsteps because they were having issues with this. And I think this is what happened with the Season 1 update. They turned some setting on with occlusion. It turned out to be bugged, so they had to disable it after a few days because it was literal wall hacks if you had a headset and working ears. So they basically just mentioned that that's still disabled. They're still working on it. Their audio system is completely bugged out at this point, and it's a mess that they're still working on. And with that, that pretty much wraps it up for the main points that I wanted to cover in today's video. However, I want to share my opinion on this update. Is this a good update? At least when we're honing in on the multiplayer side of things. Of course, I do think this update was generally a step forward, with a few minor exceptions that I just mentioned in the bad section here. Having said that though, most of the good things that we saw in this update are things that should have been in the game at launch. And instead of this update feeling like a great bonus on top of an already great game, instead it kind of feels like we're just moving a bit closer to the direction of finally getting the game into the place it should have been at launch. So I don't want to sound too ungrateful here. I think there were some nice improvements and we are moving in the right direction for the most part. But I also feel like this isn't really worth praising the developers for giving us the things that should have been there at launch. I appreciate it. Obviously, these need to come at some point, and we are starting to get some of these features slowly but surely. There's still a lot more of these core features that we normally expect at launch to be added, and I'm sure they will over time. But it's just frustrating that this is kind of the current state of gaming. And it's not just Call of Duty. You see this across multiple franchises and games out there. Instead of getting a full, complete product and then just getting bonuses and additions on top of that throughout the year, it really seems like the current mindset is just launch with the bare minimum, or even in some cases, not quite the bare minimum, and then provide the basic core features that players would normally expect at launch over time, and then call it a game as a service. I really don't like this trend in the industry. I do find it quite frustrating. And I do think it's worth bringing up. I think it's a very valid complaint that we're actually getting less features in many cases at launch, and then it's like we're expected to praise them for bringing those core features that should have been there at launch, but we get them months down the road. In either case, I do feel like this game is going to end up in a really good state by the time we hit maybe February or March, but there's still a fairly long road ahead, especially with the holiday season coming up. I suspect the devs are going to be taking some holidays, and we probably aren't going to be seeing too many big updates until like mid-January or even February. But I guess time will tell. At least I am still finding enjoyment with this game as long as I don't play it too much. So it's not all bad. I don't hate this game. I do think we saw some nice steps forward here. I just wish we would have been at least at this state when the game launched. Now, of course, those are just my thoughts and opinions on this update, and I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. Are you generally happy with the updates that we saw with the Season 1 update? Are you unhappy with anything that was in this update? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.